Welcome back to the System Read. Today we are downloading what I consider to be a critical firmware upgrade for the human operating system. Susan Cain's Quiet, The Power of Introverts in a World That Can't Stop Talking. Sarah, I'm telling you, this isn't just a book, it's a manual for why our modern social architecture is fundamentally broken. We've over-indexed on the man of action and completely forgotten the power of the man of contemplation.
Always with the tech metaphors, Marcus. Look, I'll give you this. Cain makes a beautiful case for the sensitive soul. But as a critical analyst, I have to ask, is society actually undervaluing introverts? Or are we just living in a high-velocity, high-visibility world where being loud is a functional requirement? If you're a startup founder or a remote freelancer, quiet fortitude doesn't exactly get your LinkedIn profile viewed, does it?
That's exactly the problem. Cain traces this back to the turn of the 20th century. We shifted from a culture of character, where we valued inner virtue and what you did in private, to a culture of personality. Suddenly, the ideal self became gregarious, alpha, and comfortable in the spotlight. We started looking for performing selves rather than thinking selves.
Right, because wanting to be magnetic or fascinating is such a tragedy. But Marcus, look at the transition. In the 19th century, you were an employee working with neighbors. By the 20th, you were in cities working with strangers. If you only have 5 seconds to make an impression on a recruiter or a dating app swipe, you have to sell yourself. That's not a systemic bias. That's human nature in a crowded room.
But velocity isn't competence. We've fallen for the extrovert ideal, this omnipresent belief that the ideal self is a risk-taker who favors quick decisions even if they're wrong. We rank fast talkers as more competent than slow ones, even though there is literally zero correlation between the gift of gab and having good ideas. Our current system is designed to reward the mighty likable fellow, while the genius in the corner is told to come out of their shell.
Okay, let's talk about that genius in the corner. Cain brings up Jerome Kagan's research on high-reactive infants. The idea that some of us are born with an excitable amygdala that makes us more sensitive to novelty.
It's fascinating. The babies who thrashed their arms at popping balloons, the high reactives, actually grew up to be the quiet, watchful teenagers. Their brains are literally wired to notice things that the low reactives miss. It's a survival strategy. In the animal kingdom, the slow animals hover at the edge of the pond to avoid the traps, while the fast ones rush in and get caught.
So introverts are just the slow fish? That's your competitive advantage? Marcus, let's look at the flip side. Reward sensitivity. Extroverts have dopamine pathways that are more active. They get a buzz from the chase, whether it's a big stock market win or a room full of applause. That buzz is what drives innovation, what powers the startup culture, where you have to move fast and break things. Introverts, according to Cain, are constitutionally programmed to kill their buzz. How do you build a world-changing company if your CEO is too busy scanning for peripheral issues and putting on the brakes?
You build it like Warren Buffett. He's the ultimate example of an introvert who prospered because he didn't follow the herd. While everyone else on Wall Street was in a speculative frenzy, Buffett followed his inner scorecard. He stays with problems longer. In the 2008 crash, it was the go-go aggressive extroverts who drove the bus to Abilene, a psychological phenomenon where everyone follows an action just because someone initiated it, even if they don't want to go. We need the introverted nerds to say, the portfolio will implode, even if they aren't pounding the table.
I love the idea of introvert persistence as a superpower. But let's look at the actual workplace. Cain attacks the new groupthink, the rise of open-plan offices and constant collaboration. She points out that 70% of employees now work in these boundary-less floors.
And it's a disaster for productivity. Studies show open-plan offices reduce productivity, impair memory, and increase stress. We've bought into the myth that none of us is as smart as all of us. But the truth is that brainstorming groups actually produce fewer and poorer ideas than individuals working in solitude. Take Steve Wozniak. He built the first Apple prototype alone in his cubicle at Hewlett-Packard late at night, in quiet midnights and solitary sunrises. He even says that nothing revolutionary has been invented by a committee.
But Marcus, Wozniak didn't sell the computer. Steve Jobs did. You can't ignore the symbiotic relationship. Wozniak himself said the Homebrew Computer Club was the catalyst. The community gave him the dream. My concern with Cain's argument is that she risks romanticizing the lone wolf. In modern remote work, if you don't over-communicate on Slack or Zoom, you essentially don't exist. Visibility is the work now. If you're not performing, you're replaceable by AI.
Actually, AI is the great equalizer for introverts. It allows for asynchronous collaboration, which Cain notes is where the internet truly shines. The same person who is too squeamish to present a regression analysis to an executive group can be a legend in an online idea market, where the best idea wins, not the best presenter. Introverts are actually more likely to express their real me online. Look at Craigslist founder Craig Newmark, a cerebral, bookish guy who built a public commons that touches millions.
But the screen as a barrier also creates isolation. Cain talks about restorative niches, places you go to return to your true self. Professor Brian Little would literally hide in bathroom stalls between lectures just to recharge his introvert batteries. Does it worry you, Marcus, that we built a world where people feel they have to hide in a bathroom just to survive their workday? Is that successful adaptation or a collective mental health crisis?
It's a crisis. We've turned introversion into a second-class personality trait, somewhere between a disappointment and a pathology. We arrange classroom desks in pods and tell children they can't ask the teacher for help until everyone in their group has the answer. We're training a generation of kids to be team players, while stifling the quiet, persistent thinkers who, if left alone, might actually solve the climate crisis or find the next medical breakthrough.
Let's pivot to the social media and personal branding roadmap. Cain notes that authors now have to be talk show ready to get published. Influencer culture is just the mighty likable fellow on steroids. If everyone is an orchid child who wilts in a stressful environment, how do we compete on the global stage?
By leveraging soft power. Look at the Confucian Belt countries. In many East Asian cultures, talking is discouraged. Listening and deep study are the paths to leadership. In these cultures, a quiet student is called dongshi, understanding. It's a term of praise. They have quiet persistence, which is why Asian students consistently outperform Westerners on standardized math and science tests. They aren't shouting their conviction, they are their conviction.
Oh, so we should all move to Cupertino and spend our summers studying for the calculus curriculum. Seriously, Marcus, even the Asian American kids Cain interviewed felt the pressure to become Asian superstars, people who are academically brilliant and flauntingly outgoing. It seems the extrovert ideal is an invasive species that's taking over the whole planet.
Maybe. But introverts have a secret weapon. They only connect. Introverts aren't hermits, they just prefer meaningful and sincere conversations over wild parties. In a world of surface-level digital noise, the person who actually listens is the one who builds the deepest loyalty. Cain tells the story of Laura, a quiet lawyer who won over a tough syndicate of bankers not by pounding the table, but by asking thoughtful questions and actually listening to the answers. They called her nice and tough at the same time.
Negotiation jujitsu. I liked that story. But let's look at the relationships and solitude roadmap. Marcus, you argue solitude fuels creativity. But is there a point where healthy solitude ends and pathological isolation begins? We're seeing a massive drop in empathy among college students, a 40% decline in the last 30 years. If everyone is retreating to their restorative niches, who is left to hold the social fabric together?
Solitude is not isolation. Cain argues that solitude is a catalyst to innovation. Deliberate practice, the key to exceptional achievement, is best conducted alone because it requires intense concentration and working on the task that is most challenging to you personally. We don't need more social glue at the expense of depth. We need a balance. We need free trait agreements, where we act out of character for the things we care about, provided we get to be ourselves the rest of the time.
A free trait agreement. So, I'll agree to host the dinner party for your music promoter friends if you let me spend the entire Sunday reading my book in a hammock?
Exactly. It's about putting yourself in the right lighting. For some, it's a Broadway spotlight. For others, a lamp-lit desk.
Okay, let's go for the final philosophical clash. Cain's book is a manifesto for the misunderstood. But Marcus, does it risk romanticizing introversion? She lists Newton, Einstein, Orwell, and J.K. Rowling as quiet and cerebral people. That's a high bar. What about the average introvert who isn't rewriting the laws of gravity? Does this book give people an excuse to avoid the difficult social labor that makes a society function?
It's not an excuse. It's an entitlement to be yourself. The extrovert ideal has caused deep psychic pain for millions of people who were told their whole lives that they were lazy, stupid, slow, or boring simply because they were in their heads too much. We've lost our center, Sarah. Cain isn't saying everyone should be a monk. She's saying a species where everyone was General Patton would fail just as surely as one where everyone was Vincent van Gogh.
General Patton versus Van Gogh. I'll give you that image. But look at the reality of leadership today. Even Cain notes that charismatic leadership is still the myth we buy into. We choose the rainmaker over the introverted nerd every single time, even when the nerd is right. If introverts want to lead, don't they have to adapt? Don't they have to learn to hiss like the Bengali cobra in that story?
Yes! But they hiss in the service of a core personal project. Introverts are capable of acting like extroverts for the sake of work they consider important or people they love. But they shouldn't have to fix who they are. They should stretch their personalities like a rubber band, but only so far.
The rubber band theory of personality. I can get behind that. So Marcus, what's the final system read on quiet? Is it a firmware update or a bug report?
It's both. It's a bug report on the new groupthink and a firmware update for how we value human potential. It's a reminder that gentle is powerful and that solitude is socially productive. We need to stop trying to cure introversion and start cultivating it.
Well, I'll try to remember that next time I'm in a gladiatorial law school amphitheater or an open-plan office where someone is eating tuna at the next desk. But in all seriousness, Marcus, if Cain is right, then the extrovert ideal is taking up way too much oxygen. Maybe it is time for a little more silence.
Amen to that! Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to find a restorative niche and think about everything we just said.
Go on, Marcus. I'll be here, monitoring the social cues. See you next time on The System Read.
See you in the quiet.
Thank you for listening to this discussion on the System Read podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please hit the like button and subscribe to ensure you don't miss our upcoming deep dives.